And on to our big story this evening, viewers. A day after Prime Minister Modi actually broke protocol to personally welcome his brother, Qatar Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al-Thani at the New Delhi airport, the two countries have elevated ties to a strategic partnership. It's a move to further bolster ties in trade, investment and energy cooperation. The two leaders reviewed bilateral relations shortly after Sheikh Tamim was accorded a ceremonial welcome by President Droupadi Murmu at the Rashtrapati Bhavan earlier today, in fact. Meanwhile, PM Modi has personally invited the Emir to India, reflecting the importance attached by India to bilateral ties. Now, this is the Qatar Emir's first visit to India in nearly a decade, and it marks the reset of bilateral ties following strains. Now, they were caused by the incarceration of 8 Indian Navy veterans in Qatar 2 years ago. For more on this story, we are joined by Professor James Dorsey. He's the Middle East expert and the Adjunct Senior Fellow at Singapore's Rajaratnam School of International Studies. We'll take a look at the uncut first.
India and Qatar today enjoy deep-rooted friendly relations anchored in historic trade and people-to-people ties. Both countries commemorated the 50 years of establishment of diplomatic relations in 2023. The Prime Minister thanked the Emir of Qatar for his support for the large Indian community in Qatar, particularly during the COVID-19 pandemic period. The Qatar Emir also appreciated the Indian community for its contribution to the development of Qatar. India and Qatar today enjoy deep-rooted
My colleague Mohammad Ghazali, in fact, joins us for more on this developing story. Ghazali, what's the latest you're picking? There was an MEA press conference, in fact, where a lot was mentioned that has happened during the past 2 days. What are you picking up? What's the latest?
Steve, both the parties have reaffirmed their ties between the two countries, and they have now elevated it to a strategic partnership. Now, a strategic partnership certainly certifies that both the parties will engage and deepen their cooperation in multiple areas, be it energy, defense, education, and other sectors, and they will also explore new avenues for investment. Basically, the thrust of this entire meeting was that Qatar happens to be a very influential partner of India in the West Asia, having a very significant history in being the key negotiator. And at a time when West Asia is in turmoil right now, India certainly needs a reliable partner. And the kind of gesture Prime Minister Modi had shown yesterday while going to the airport and to receive the Emir of Qatar and then giving him guard of honor at Rashtrapati Bhavan today, it certainly shows that India is investing heavily in partners in Gulf. And today, multiple MOUs and agreements are signed upon. Some were related to the tax evasion. Other was certainly this agreement where India and Qatar have decided to elevate their ties. And why this entire visit was very significant from 2 points of view. One, that Qatar also happens to be our key partner who provides us or caters to 70% or most of the energy needs which India has. And it is also a very influential voice in the West Asia. It is also a member of the Gulf Cooperation Council, and having Qatar on its side, India can always influence or shape the view of the Gulf Cooperation Council, another powerful body in the West Asia. So in overall, the relation between the two countries will only grow stronger from here on after the visit of the Emir of Qatar is what the External Affairs Ministry of India believes.
Of course, that's what we hope, Ghazali. The bilateral relationship will only get stronger after this. Meanwhile, for more on this big story, we are now joined by Professor James Dorsey. He's the Middle East expert and Adjunct Senior Fellow at Singapore's Rajaratnam School of International Studies and former Indian Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar. Thank you so much for taking out the time, gentlemen. Professor Dorsey, to you first. Now, how will this newly signed strategic partnership, so-called strategic partnership between India and Qatar, impact the broader geopolitical dynamics in the Gulf region? Now, particularly in respect to the shifting alliances, so to say, in energy and trade.
I don't know that it's going to have an impact in terms of shifting alliances. What I do think is that both countries have a vested interest in this relationship. India obviously has an interest in having as broad as possible relationships within the Gulf and among the Gulf countries, particularly given the subtle differences between the various Gulf countries. And at the same time, Qatar has a vested interest in India as a partner, both in terms of technology, but also in terms of the diversification of its clients for its primarily for its liquefied gas, which is part of Qatar's soft power strategy.
Well, on from that, Ambassador Sajjanhar is here with us. Ambassador, now, what are the key factors behind the decision to elevate the relations to a strategic partnership?
You know, it's basically, first of all, thank you very much for having me on your show. It's a win-win partnership for both the countries. You know, as Professor Dorsey said, what is Qatar's interest? You know, it's looking for a stable, growing market, assured market for its fossil fuels. And India imports about 40% of its needs of LPG, LNG, petrochemicals, etc., from Qatar. So it's the third largest importer, global importer of these fossil fuels from Qatar. So it's very important in that context. But also in the context, you know, of what you mentioned, shifting global alliances, India has emerged as a very significant player, a very significant global actor, you know, in the area of, you know, changing strategic partnerships, as also in the area of technology. So in all these areas, Qatar is looking for India's partnership, for India's support. As far as Qatar is concerned, for India, as I said, you know, a very significant bilateral partner, but also it punches much above its political weight and its economic weight in that region. You see, when the whole issue of you know, the Doha agreement between the United States and the Taliban was being negotiated, that was done in Doha, in Qatar, and that is where, in fact, the office of the Taliban is also located. And India's relations with Taliban are getting, you know, coming on a more even keel, much better than, you know, in 2021 when Taliban came to power in Kabul. Even in the Hamas-Israel conflict in Gaza, we've seen that Qatar has played a very important role and continues to play a very important role. So I think you look at it in many ways. Of course, it had to face the brunt of the other GCC members some years ago when they boycotted Qatar and made some, you know, 13 demands of it, like shutting down Al Jazeera and, you know, doing away with its relations with Iran. But that notwithstanding, Qatar was able to, you know, withstand all that pressure. So I think its importance has continued to grow. So the strategic partnership that has been signed, it is a multifaceted partnership, not related only to business. It is also our, you know, Indian diaspora, which is about 830,000 out of the total population of 3 million in Qatar. So that is a very strong living bridge between the two countries. And the visit of the Emir, you know, the special gesture shown by Prime Minister Modi by going to the airport, I think, to receive him, I think that will go a long way in further cementing these ties and taking them to new heights.
Well, that's absolutely correct, Ambassador. In fact, if I'm not wrong, Indian expatriates make up around 27% of the entire population. And I'll come back to you on that. But Professor Dorsey, how can, taking from what the Ambassador also said and you also mentioned, how can the countries leverage their growing economic cooperation in energy and trade?
I think, well, one of the areas which I think we haven't really spoken much about is technology. And in some ways, Qatar lags behind. You've seen Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates in recent months put their bets in the United States in terms of artificial intelligence. Both countries want to be leaders in AI. They've weakened their relationships with China with regard to technology and AI. So the technology bit here, I think, is something that one shouldn't underestimate.
Ambassador, now coming to you on the Indian expatriate community in Qatar. Now, how significant is the community in Qatar, which makes up around 27% of the entire population of the country, as I was saying, in shaping the diplomatic and the economic relations between both the countries, in fact?
I think it's a huge factor, you know, because what this government, particularly under Prime Minister Modi when he came to power, I think one of the, you know, foremost objectives of the government has been to take care of the Indian community. So you would have seen wherever Prime Minister has gone or the other ministers have gone, they always connect with the Indian community. They always, the Indian diaspora is a very important element of the foreign policy of this government. And so the support to the Indian diaspora is very important. And of course, the Emir also, whenever he has, whenever meetings have taken place, or, the two leaders, whether it was Prime Minister's visit to Qatar in 2015 or 2024 last year, or the conversations or the visit of Emir to India. So they have been very, spoken about the huge contribution that the Indian diaspora has made. They are a very diverse lot. They are a hugely talented lot, and they are held in high respect by the leadership in Qatar. So they are truly, as I said, a living bridge between the two countries, which strengthens our partnership, and this is reflected, in the large number of cultural events that take place, and of course, also in terms of the huge number of bilateral visits that take place between the two countries. They, are from a wide array of fields, whether it is in medicine, in education, in engineering, and they really bring the two countries together.
Professor Dorsey, before you leave, my last question to you. Now, how do India and Qatar, in fact, plan to collaborate on addressing regional security issues, given their strategic location? Both the countries are placed in strategic locations. How do they, how will they manage to address these geopolitical and regional security concerns?
Well, I think obviously Qatar takes the lead in a lot of this, given its role as a mediator. We're going to have to see where the second phase Gaza ceasefire negotiations go. And of course, what will come out of the meetings in Riyadh between the foreign ministers of the United States and Russia. While that is focused on Ukraine, without question, Iran and other Middle Eastern subjects are going to be discussed. I think by and large, Qatar and India find themselves on the same side of the divide. I think you're also going to see probably greater security cooperation between the two countries, greater defense cooperation, and that's going to be part of what is hopefully going to help stabilize the Middle East.
And taking on from what Professor Dorsey, in fact, said right now, Ambassador Sajjanhar, how do you see the revised double taxation agreement impacting business relations between the two nations?
Yeah, I think that is a very important document also, in addition to the strategic partnership document. This is avoidance of double taxation, and also, there was an agreement earlier, but obviously there were some flaws in it that were found, and that is why this has been further amended. And I think that will provide greater certainty and greater credibility as far as the economic exchanges are concerned, economic interaction is concerned. And that will, I think, help to take the economic relationship, trade relationship further. Because at the moment, if you see, it is about $14 billion. In both sides, there are about 20,000 Indian companies which are operating in Qatar. Of course, in this bilateral trade, now it has been agreed to increase it, make it double to $28 billion in another 5 years. And the trade is heavily weighted in favor of Qatar, obviously, because we are such significant importers of fossil fuels to meet our energy needs and energy requirements. But that having been said, our exports of about $1.7 billion, they are, they are about the fourth largest to Qatar, and I think that is also going to increase. So as both the countries are looking at a significant expansion of their bilateral trade, investment, engagement and partnership, I think this agreement will go a long way in facilitating that.
Well, thank you once again, gentlemen, for taking out the time.